Hi there, my name is Helen Bass. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and founder of Sincere Practice. You're listening to the Sincere podcast. Today we're talking about family dynamics and parents as an Asian woman. I know what it's like to grow up with a ton of filial piety. Even to this day, I have a ton of respect for my parents. And if you grew up Christian like I did too, that puts an even added layer of just honoring your father and mother. And today we're going to talk about the psychological necessity of boundaries to prevent burnout and emotional exhaustion. So today's episode is going to go into 4 parts. We're going to go into the weight of being a perfect daughter. We're going to reevaluate honor versus compliance and what honor and compliance differences look like. Third, we're going to address the specific guilt of a lot of first-generation women. First generation essentially means that you came to the United States or you came to North America, for example, with your parents as a child. That's called 1.5 gen, or you immigrated with them as a full-fledged adult. This can also apply to second generation women as well. And finally, we're going to talk about communicating boundaries with grace. If you want a free guide on how to communicate your boundaries, it's in the link to my YouTube channel, and it's going to be linked in the information for this episode below. So let's get started. And let's talk about the burden of the unspoken, the weight of being the perfect daughter. For many Asian women, especially eldest daughters, those in immigrant families, there's this uncomposed script that you have to stay composed, you have to perform strength, you have to hold everything together for the sake of the family unit. If you want to learn more about this, you can watch my previous episode on being an eldest daughter. But what happens when the script actually deteriorates our mental health? What happens when your need for peace impacts your view of culture, faith, and the world? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Growing up in an Asian immigrant family, I'm a first generation Filipina. I came here when I was about 5. There's a ton of episodes I did about this, but essentially, you grow up seeing your parents go through it. I saw my parents go through it. My parents worked multiple jobs, and as a result, I felt like I had to be perfect all the time. And the weight of perfection is really debilitating, let me tell you. Some of you might know this, being an eldest daughter or just being someone who has grown up with a lot of family pressure. You know the internal cogs of how a family works, and so as a byproduct of that, you put a lot of expectation on yourself to have everything figured out, and the term perfect is just an ideal. It's not realistic. And so I want to redefine honor. We often hear that term that we need to respect our parents. Yes, that's important. I think respect for any individual is important, but for many households, we were taught to obey without question, to sacrifice your needs in order to keep the peace. And as a therapist and as a woman of faith, I want to offer a different lens that maybe honoring our parents does not mean self-abandonment. We don't have to give up our own needs in order to make everyone else happy. It does not mean we are required to stay in cycles of generational trauma just to prove our loyalty. Grace is not just for the person you're forgiving, it's also for the person you're setting a boundary to. So this episode is all about boundaries, and essentially we can honor our parents' sacrifices while still acknowledging that we need a different kind of safety and emotional health than they were able to provide. And let's talk about the guilt behind that, because some of y'all might be uncomfortable with the word boundaries. A lot of people see boundaries as these like walls that you set up, but boundaries are actually doorways. They keep people in. They don't keep people out. When you set a boundary, it's like a window into your house or a door. The guilt of heavy sinking is often a byproduct of not setting those healthy boundaries. Yelling, speaking out, feeling like everything is up to you is a byproduct of not knowing what your own needs are. So a question I want you to ask yourself is, what gets me annoyed? What gets me to lose my temper? And what are the steps that lead up to that I should have stopped beforehand? This gives you choice as an opportunity to choose the type of relationship that maybe you didn't get to choose as a child when talking to your parents. Personally, this is a lesson that I've had to learn as an older daughter, that there are times where you will want your alone time, where you won't always want to be around your parents. And my parents are getting older. My grandma is aging. Navigating that guilt is really hard. We often think that we're being disrespectful. Maybe saying no to a family expectation sets a limit on a difficult conversation. And oftentimes that guilt is rooted in a fear of instability, not wanting to put any more weight on our parents, especially with their sacrifices. But I want to remind you of one thing. You were allowed to be a whole person. You are allowed to be someone who has needs. You are allowed to seek treatment and healing even if it's hard for your family to talk about. You're not too much. Setting a boundary isn't an act of war. It's an act of stewardship over the life and mind that God gave you. Now we're going to go into some practical steps. You might be listening to this and going, Helen, yes, I need some practical boundaries. Like, how do I get that? So how do we do this? How do we find the words to set a boundary when we've been taught to stay silent for so long? It starts with identifying one thing, that your exhaustion is not a personality trait. You are not an exhausted person, right? It's a signal that your capacity has been reached. It means moving from a place of panic-driven ambition to a place of safety and rest. To help you navigate these specific conversations, I've put together a resource for you. If you're struggling with what to say or how to start, download my free guide to communicating boundaries, linked in the show notes below. You don't have to survive this alone. Our doors are always open if you're ready for your healing journey, since your practice is a therapy practice that I started, where I personally do therapy for people in California. But let's go into some practical tips and kind of share this free guide for you just so you can get an overview of what this looks like. So here we go. So this is the free guide of communicating boundaries for Asian women. The whole goal is to help you communicate clear, respectful boundaries in a way where your voice and values are heard. The cultural pressures of don't make any waves, people pleasing, being seen as rude are all common things that I see in my practice. And a quick reframe that I want to share with you is a boundary is information, what you will do and what you will not do. A boundary is a choice, what you will do if the boundary is not respected. Just want to acknowledge for people listening to the podcast, I've now shared my free communication guide. You can get this again in the show notes below, but I'm just sharing my screen for people that are watching on YouTube. And a boundary is a form of kindness. When you tell people what you need, it means that you care about them. A boundary is not a debate. It's not something to be argued. It's not something that you ask that someone does for you. It's not some way to control someone or to win. It's a way to have a relationship with someone. And so just to tell you what this looks like, a boundary has 3 parts. It has context. Hey, when you told me that I was too sensitive, I felt really hurt because I really value and need, this is where you communicate your boundary, I really value and need someone who can listen to me openly. And then the next step is what happens now. You allow facilitation of the conversation. If someone puts you down, if someone makes a joke about you and your body, if someone tries to call you past 9 p.m., tell them what you will do. I don't like it when you make comments about how sensitive I am. Next time I hear that, I might walk away just to take some space. Right? So here are some common examples. When jokes are made about my body, I'm going to end the conversation. If it happens again, I'll step away. Or I'm not available for calls after 9 p.m. If you call then, I'll respond the next day. So it's important to start with some non-negotiables. Pick 3 to 5 that matter most right now. So this is your assignment. 3 to 5 things that matter most that I talk to a lot of clients about is my time off is protected. My time off is protected. My body is not up for discussion. I do not explain personal choices repeatedly. I do not tolerate yelling, insults, or threats. I choose who gets access to me. So these are just some examples. Maybe you can finish some of these sentences I feel resentment when I say yes when I want to say no, when I need more blank. So, some common things that you might already be thinking as a result of communicating boundaries is I'll be seen as rude, but clarity is respectful. Another one is I should be grateful. Gratitude doesn't cancel your needs. You can appreciate someone and still say no. Another one is I don't want to bring shame to my family. Remember, boundaries protect relationships. Quiet resentment and burnout create bigger ruptures. Another one is I'm scared of conflict. Discomfort, remember, is not danger. Start small so you can build this skill. So I've created some more scripts that you can copy. Just download it if you want to get the full resource. Again, this is not a replacement for therapy, but there's a 7-day action plan and some links to the newsletter. But thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, y'all.